think that's what I've seen of the very best coaches are the ones that are able to critically think about themselves and grow, and then the ones that kind of zoom out enough to see how all of the pieces slot together, whether that's the physios, whether that's the psychologists, the nutritionists, the coaches, the skill coaches, whether that's the media guys, and how does all of those competing demands fit together for that one individual. Those are the guys that I think are operating at the highest level.
This podcast is brought to you by Force 8 Coach, your sport, your platform. Welcome back to my podcast, Science in Sports. I'm your host, Simon, as usual. I'm a sports scientist in German ice hockey, also working as a under 17 strength and conditioning coach for the national ice hockey team. And since April this year, I'm very happy to say that I'm now also a university teacher in my former university. And today I have a very special guest, common friend of ours, Marco, introduced us to each other. So thanks already to you, Marco. He's from the world of soccer, from London to be exactly. But we come to that in a little bit. First of all, hi, Pete. How are you doing?
Hi, Simon. Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's very nice to have you on the show. I already said it just now. We got introduced by Marco, who is from Croatia, and we both kind of got to know him and got to talk to him also. And so it's always interesting to see that we're all from different places in Europe or all over the world. And funny enough, we end up in the same room now, you and me. So it's always funny and always very cool to have experts in the field of strength and conditioning on the show. Can you, for me and my listeners, give me again, I mean, we already talked a bit, but for also, especially for my listeners, a quick introduction about yourself?
Sure. So, Pete Burridge in England. I currently work for Chelsea Football Club as a physical performance coach, working with the first team. I've just finished about my first season at Chelsea and entering into my second season now, just in the midst of preseason as we speak. Prior to that, spent a decent chunk of time in rugby with Bristol Bears rugby and Leicester Tigers rugby. Prior to that, working in university, Exeter University, Leicester City Football Club, and an internship at Leicester Tigers rugby. So kind of been across football and rugby a fair bit. But yeah, now working with the first team with Premier League footballers. Which is a cool challenge coming from rugby to football and the shifting codes. Yeah, it's been really cool.
Why was it football or why was it rugby in your eyes? Why didn't you choose ice hockey, for example?
Well, I don't know if your listeners know how good Great Britain are at ice hockey, but we kind of suck. So there's not many opportunities in ice hockey in England and the UK. I'm an ice hockey fan myself. I follow the NHL a little bit, but I knew that the opportunities in England are within football, within rugby, sports like cricket, or the Olympic sports. And so I was very, very lucky enough when I graduated to get an internship within rugby and got a really, really good first education to what good quality strength conditioning, sports science looks like. And then, have traversed through football and rugby ever since. Dependent on the opportunity and the challenge that I've been faced with the different groups that I've worked with.
Mm-hmm. Funny enough, because you just mentioned the British ice hockey team, a former teammate of mine when I started my pro career is from England, and he played for the British national team. So funny that you mentioned that. But we obviously don't want to. Yeah.
He's probably not going to take the comment that they suck too well, but yeah, obviously that's in relative terms to the top European sides.
Yeah, for sure.
Canada and the US. It'd be great to see Team GB progress and the league to grow, but obviously in England it is very much a minor sport, which is still a really cool sport. But if you were to ask most people, they'd have no idea about ice hockey, even at the top end from the NHL. They wouldn't even know who Wayne Gretzky is. So from that perspective, that tells you the sort of IQ or ice hockey IQ of the people in England that is just not really on their radar. Whereas football obviously is huge. Unfortunately, football didn't come home the other night. More heartbreak as usual. This time Argentina rather than the Germans beating us. Yes, like football is the main sport here, and then rugby is a secondary, but still pretty big sport, and obviously very very kind of physically driven sport where you can make a decent amount of impact as an S&C coach or as a sports scientist.
Yeah. You said at the beginning when you introduced yourself that you are the physical performance coach, if I'm not mistaken, for the first team of Chelsea or Chelsea FC. Sorry. What can my listeners think about this job description? Because I think if you tell me you're a strength and conditioning coach or you tell me you're a sports scientist, people can sort of understand what it means. But there's a lot of interesting things in the description already. What's your actual job there? What are you responsible to do there?
It's funny, right? Because we have different names. You go to America and everyone's called a strength coach or a physical therapist if you're a physio. Like in, I left my job in rugby while I was an athletic performance coach. Prior to that, I was a strength and conditioning coach. I've been a strength and power coach. Within football, the sort of top position tends to be fitness coach. Within rugby, guys from the Southern Hemisphere would call you a trainer, even though you would have another title. But I would say I would identify myself as a strength and conditioning coach. But I understand that perhaps people who write the job descriptions try to give a slightly larger scope for what it is that we really do and what we're in charge of. And it's not necessarily just linked to just strength or just conditioning. And I know there's a sort of adage at the minute in the world of strength and conditioning, maybe more so from North America, that we're very focused on the S, but the C is something that gets discounted. Maybe here in Europe that's a little different, but certainly in roles that I've played in the past, like you're the psychologist, you're the physiologist, you delve into some sports science, which from a rugby term, the sports scientist would be the data analyst, the GPS guy, the heart rate guy, whereas the sports scientist in football at times is the guy that delivers the on-pitch warm-ups. Whereas in rugby, the sports scientist would be the nerdy guy that has the iPad on the side of the field. Whereas maybe in football, the sports scientist is the guy leading the warm-ups and then doing some of the GPS data. And then you have a strength and power coach who doesn't even get let out of the gym and only takes the players after the session or pre-session and maybe doesn't even see the field. So it's interesting moving from environment to environment, what we call ourselves and the scopes of the role. But certainly I'd see myself as a sort of jack of all trades, master of none, in that like I'd like to think that certainly the bread and butter, the strength, power, the conditioning side of things, the speed development, the agility development side of things is my main thing. But certainly I know, like in roles I've played in the past, like you have quite a large impact on the culture as a cultural architect of the player group. You develop personal relationships with players where sometimes you can have a far more qualified nutritionist, but they come to you for nutrition advice. So it's up to you to disseminate maybe what the nutritionist is telling to a way that, because of the relationship you built through many hours on the field and in the gym, that you can get that information across. Certainly when I worked in the academy space, you end up as a little bit of a mentor, and some of the psychological traits and development of those characteristics is part of that S&C role, which obviously isn't part of the job description, but it absolutely definitely plays a role when you're helping mold 16, 17, 18-year-olds with some of their professional habits. And I guess fortunately, but unfortunately, I've had to deal with some kind of dark things with players maybe dealing with some mental health issues where they decided to confide in you. And obviously I'm way unqualified to deal with that, but on a basis of trust built from time in with you, they've decided to open up to you about some of the thoughts that they were having or some of the problems that they're dealing with. And again, that definitely isn't in my job description, and sometimes you do have to refer that out. But like certainly when it comes to the scope of the role, sometimes it can be quite large in the impact you have on players' lives. And I'm sure you have it with players texting you late at night or asking certain things that, it's not necessarily a punch in, punch out kind of job. Like, you are
Yeah.
there to service the players where possible. And I guess the physical performance side of things is that the performance is probably the word, in that who owns performance. We're certainly a key stakeholder in that, but like, again, performance is across the coaching staff. So in ice hockey, that'd be the on ice coaches as well, play a huge role. So yeah, I think it just kind of hopefully just shows that the role is maybe a little bit more all encompassing than just your textbook, get guys strong, get guys fit, and then that's it. Like, there's a lot more that goes on.
Yeah, I know exactly where you're coming from, because when you mention how many people are around you as like in the staff team, I see myself there, but in ice hockey we don't really have that huge of a budget to have a separate strength coach, a separate sports scientist, a nutritionist, a mental coach. And just as you described it, I'm going into my 5th season now with my current team, and the trust that I built over the last years with some guys who are still here, they text me at night about what they should eat, if it's good to take a bath, and sometimes some funny or little stupid questions, but still, you know it as good as I do. You want to help them. You want to make them better, or make their lives also a little bit easier on the ice, or off the pitch, or something like that. So it's funny to hear that even though you're in the Premier League, like in the highest soccer football league you can imagine, after the Bundesliga, obviously, that that you still have the same like funny scenarios, or the same things happening to all of you guys, the way that it happens to me, even though I'm like the nerdy sports scientist and the strength coach, and sometimes have to be the mental coach. But at the end of the day, we both, or your team and my team, then our goal is to improve their physical parameters. We want to develop them and support them with evidence-based training, or also with like just the coach's eye. I think also that it's also important in soccer. So really interested to talk to you about that a little bit more in the next 20 to 30 minutes. Um, what I'm really interested in, which is also already a couple of minutes in the back of my head, because we're also in the mix of starting preseason pretty soon, and you said you are right in preseason at the moment and go for a tournament, if I remember. How is your job? Or how is your role, for example, now in the current state? Let's say on a weekly basis. How often do you see your players? How many minutes do you really have with them? Because I know it from some friends in soccer here in Germany that they might only see them for warm ups. They might see them only for cool downs, and then that's it for the day. But I feel like on your stage, it's probably more time that you spend with them.
Yeah, we're quite lucky, and obviously that's quite manager dependent. Like, dependent on the manager, depends on what the philosophy is, and if he's got a guy who's his performance guy or fitness coach, you're quite at the whim of what they want. But we're very lucky in that, A, we've got some pretty established processes, and B, we've got a manager who has a guy who is very supportive of some of the physical work, and we do get a decent amount of time. So, like, to run you through, we're in week 2 of preseason at the minute, compared to rugby, where maybe you'd get a block of 5 weeks without games, you'd get a week off, and then you'd maybe get another block of 3-4 weeks with games starting to come in, where you can really almost block periodize, or really get stuck into developing some of the physical capacities. In football, my year 1, we had a preseason game, 2 preseason games on a Friday and a Sunday in week 1 of preseason, and then the Premier League started the week after. Here we've got a little bit more time and space, which is good. So we've got 3 weeks before we then go on tour, which is certainly not performance driven. It's a lot more kind of commercially driven. So there's lots of games, but there's still windows that you can take advantage of to get training in, and maybe be a little bit more aggressive, because the games are friendlies. before the year starts. So we're looking at, I think it's about 7 weeks before the proper matches start. So you have a decent amount of time to instill some of these things. But yeah, so for example, we're in week 2 at the minute. The guys came in on a Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. We had probably 20 minutes with them pre-session every day, and a half an hour post-session to do gym work every day. And then we're now in the guts of Monday to Friday, where we had gym basically every day bar Tuesday, I think, with again roughly 15 to 20 minutes in the morning, and then 20 to 35 minutes in the afternoon. So we're looking at getting 2 lower body stimuluses in the week, and at least 1 upper body and trunk stimulus, with some power done on a -1, which we're at our first -1 today. So we've got a game tomorrow where we can develop some of those power qualities. We're compared to some other football stories that I hear, we've got it quite good. It's just then making sure that we engage the players to get them to buy in, to do things with intent, which I think is a key thing. And then making sure that you take advantage of those windows if you've got them. So rather than just doing fluff, like do really purposeful training that is going to actually develop some physical qualities. We're hopefully making a decent stab of that this year, to try and develop some of our guys. And we've got a very young squad, so they're pretty ripe for physical development anyway. But it's just setting them along the right track to get them in good quality habits, and have good quality training habits, have a good gym IQ where they know what they're doing, they know how they should lift, they know why they should lift, they know how to stack habits with nutrition, with sleep and recovery, and those kinds of things that obviously augments the work that you do in the gym.
How do you get them to buy in? And also, how do you, because you mentioned the manager is a big aspect, or the coach, for example, as well, how do you get them all on the same page to understand that there is no problem to have a workout, especially in preseason, like you just said, game day -1, it's still okay and it's still valuable to have a gym session before a game if you do it correctly? Because I feel like if, let's say, you're the coach and I'm the strength guy, and I'm like, hey, we have a game tomorrow, but we go to the gym today, that there can be some problems coming up. And I had it as well in my past, that there was just this misunderstanding of, I don't want to work out with them for an hour or 2, like maximum weightlifting. Just want him to get them activated, to have a couple of sprints or jumps or some light movements, to get them prepared for the game. And same as you just described. And so my question in general is just like, how do you manage that, and how do you talk to the coach, and how do you manage that there is no problem, and he also sees that good, valuable training, even if it's a day before the game?
I guess both the player and the coach, the first thing is you have to educate them on the why of why you're doing this. It isn't for you, it's for them, is the first thing. And then the second thing is, like, especially if you've got new players or guys that come off of an off season where they may or may not have done as much work as you would have hoped, is being smart with your entry volumes. Like, what you don't want to do is be like, right, we're in pre-season, as much as that's a window to really kind of put into overdrive physical development, they're doing a lot of work on pitch too, and with a new manager and instilling new tactics and things like that. That's still the main thing, especially in a sport like football, which is so technically, tactically driven. The strength work and the conditioning work certainly takes a bit of a backseat, but where possible, take advantage of those windows and start developing those habits. So a good example would be, like, hamstring injuries are the biggest problem in football. It's the biggest injury burden of all the injury risk sites. So strength is a huge risk factor for that. And so that sits nicely within something that I have to deliver upon. But certainly when I start in that first week, as much as I'd be like, right, okay, we can RDL here, we can Nordic there, we can do this exercise, we can eccentrically overload and really chase strength qualities, and we have a really good session. What that might then do is completely write them off for their on-pitch session the next day, or if I'm asking them to run at high velocities, which is also a key thing around protecting around hamstring injuries. They might not be able to run because they're that sore, or they end up in a position that they've got DOMs to the level that it might be risky to actually run them that fast. And yeah, I guess a key thing is if that coach has entrusted you with that time and with the players, is making sure that you utilize it effectively, but don't get greedy with what you're doing, that it too much affects the on pitch stuff. Obviously, in preseason, they're going to have to train through some fatigue and through some mental fog, and to develop something like soreness is a poor indicator of progress. But certainly, it can sometimes be a supplementary adjunct of doing strength training through range at high intensities. So it's just a key thing of like, okay, managing that level of fatigue. So, for example, in week one of preseason, we were doing, I think it was like 2 sets of 2 or 2 sets of 3 Nordics, which is quite a minimal effective dose. But then it's okay, now you've built up that first session in the bank. Okay, how are you going to progressively overload that? And that might then be you go from sets of 2 to sets of 3 to sets of 4. Maybe then you go 3 sets of 3. Maybe you then go 3 sets of 4. Maybe then it's a 3+2 cluster set. Maybe you overload it in a different way. And by that point, they've built that tolerance up to the strength training itself, that they can cope with the demands alongside the ever increasing demands on pitch as well. So you just got to be smart with not writing a guy off when he gets overexcited in week one and then he never comes back. So like,
Yeah.
I think for a few players, certainly some of the newer guys have felt like, oh, is this it? Or is this the only thing that I'm doing? It's like, yeah, because I know you've got so much new things being thrown at you. The gym will try and get you to this point that we're really going to push. But with everything else, probably that is more important. And the gym stuff is almost slow cooking in the background. So I think that's the key thing of not getting too greedy where you do a big session and you write loads of guys off and then maybe the coach is like, I'm not sure whether I should give you that time anymore because you've ruined my session the day later. The player then also doesn't trust you because it's like, right, okay, I don't want to push that hard anymore because I didn't like how that felt. So it's like just nudging them up towards a level that is good enough to drive those physiological adaptations. I think certainly from going from rugby to football, like the footballers are a lot less willing to go there than perhaps the rugby players are, and that is partly down to the psychological characteristics and also maybe the demands of the sport. So with those football guys, it's maybe playing a long-term game of actually maybe stacking 10 sessions that were 6, 7 out of 10 is better than having 3 sessions at 10 out of 10, but then they get sore, they don't like it, they switch off, and then you lose them, and then you've only got 3 sessions. So I think it's taking the long road approach is key, and making sure that you're educating them along the way, of showing them their progress, showing them why this is important, showing them what they might feel like and why it's okay to feel like that, and the benefits of feeling like that, and just involving them in the process wherever you can.
Yeah, I think it's just like you said, it's not about creating the hardest gym session you can. It's more about giving the players the right stimulus to prepare them for the games, because as I love going in the weight room with them, and just because it's like my job and my I really like to do that, but not to destroy them, to just build them and to develop them to be a little bit more prepared, or a little bit better prepared for the next game, if you can say it like this. And I think that's the key to understand, just as you just beautifully described. To You don't have to do a 10 out of 10 workout every day just to build them up, especially in the preseason. Like I said, we're starting preseason in 2 weeks. So probably when this episode comes out, we're just in the preseason. We have a lot of players from the US or from Canada, obviously a lot of German guys, and most of them are new to the team, so they have to get settled in. They have to deal with jet lag. They have to deal with medical exams, with a new city, a new environment. And if you gradually build that up on the ice and off the ice, in our case, I think you have a way better connection already when the season starts, when you really have to perform. Then when you already first day that they are here, you put them on the VO2 bike test, then they already hate you and they probably didn't even meet you yet.
Yeah.
So I'm right with you on that one. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important, like to rather than flash fry, you're slow cooking, and
Yeah.
it's a battle in your head because you realize, especially in football where the games are large, and I know in ice hockey it's the same, where the games come thick and fast. Preseason might be your one window that you get to maybe aggressively hunt down some of these qualities,
Yeah.
but it's that balance between turning that dial up a little bit, but being smart, especially with your new players, where again the stress load outside of even the new training of living in a new city, having maybe your social network isn't fully established, your family and loved ones might not be with you, you're living on your own, you're living out of a hotel, it doesn't feel like home. Like that has a systemic stress effect on you that's going to limit your ability to recover from all of these new things with new players. Your social capital within the group is still being established, so you're not necessarily fully settled that way either. You've been brought in as a new player, so you're constantly being judged of like, am I good enough? Am I the star player? Do they view me as that? Am I delivering upon that? There's so much going on in these guys' lives that actually, yeah, taking a long-term approach is better than kind of flash frying them and then burning them, and they get injured, and they then get 2 months of development with you, which is great, but then they're not playing. So it's like, you know what? Actually, you'd rather kind of slowly. It's probably the better approach.
Yeah, especially I don't know how it's in the Premier League with the amount of young players in the league or in your team. You said you have a pretty young team. For us, the age span in my team is from 18 to I think the upcoming season 41. So it's also again the challenge for me as the only like strength coach to really balance the workloads for each party, let's say, because
Mm.
as you know, or as maybe also a couple of coaches listening knows, you can't do the same workout with an 18-year-old than with a 41-year-old, but you still
Yeah.
need to prepare them both for the upcoming games. And I
Yeah.
think if I'm honest with myself, that was a thing where I struggled at the beginning because I thought, okay, I have one hockey team, so I have one plan for the whole team. And now, after a couple of years, fast forward, I understand that there are different needs for each player. So we really have to, in the best world, talk to each player and make a plan for him and his weaknesses, his strength, and also his like training history to prepare each player individually to the main goal to perform at the next game or over the season, for example, because we have I think 52 or 54 games plus the playoffs at the end, so coming up at like 70 games kind of. And how is it for you? I mean, you are in the matrix probably longer than I am, and you have also a very challenging job because I know there is even more money involved and even more pressure from all sides, that you keep the players available, that you keep them performing at their best, like in best world, never get injured. And then you have to deal with also a cruel schedule. Then you have the Premier League, you have the Champions League and everything and so on. So how do you balance that? How did you get to start on that? Are you talking to the players in different ages? Are you putting them in different categories? Or do you just do the same workout for everyone?
So I guess the first thing is Biggie Smalls said it right: more money, more problems. So that's definitely a
That's a
big
great
thing.
quote.
That when the profile of the player goes up, they have a lot more people around them, a lot more opinions. Maybe they've got even external practitioners that you have to balance with and try and get on board and get everyone sailing that ship going in the same direction. When perhaps, certainly from my experiences of rugby to football, the player is a little bit more individualistic. But I guess that's where the art comes in, right? Of whether you're dealing with the 18-year-old or the 41-year-old, is you've got to balance the needs of the team and the collective and the cohesive nature of trying to bring that group together within hugely disparate experiences and needs of an 18-year-old compared to a 41-year-old, of who may or may not know his body really, really well by that point, and you're probably less aggressive with chasing physical qualities because at 41, the guy pretty much is what he is at that point. Whereas the 18-year-old probably doesn't know his body, doesn't know what works for him or doesn't, and probably doesn't have a good idea of that either. And you can play a bigger role of kind of influencing what those behaviors are. And I think that's where it starts to become a little bit more individual. Then you've got another layer underneath of players' injury history is going to dictate where their injury risk sites are and how you might program differently for those guys. Then you've got the physiological traits of whether they're more sort of type 1 or type 2, whether they're like, if they're conditioning side of things, if they're more like better centrally or better peripherally, of what do they struggle with, and how you train like from a plyometric perspective. Like, you've got the guys who are very tendon and elastic based, and the race horses that can have huge outputs, and then you've got your kind of cart horses which are more muscular, force driven, that maybe aren't very reactive, but they can still be doing the same exercise, but maybe how we cue it is different. Or again, the art is actually, no, I do need to give these guys a different exercise, and I need to lean into what one guy needs rather than the other guy. But having that work as a connected, knitted group is, I think, where the art comes in of program design, of how do you make the player feel that everything is truly individual to them whilst working within a team. And also, again, if you're limited staff wise, like, it's going to be very hard to individually program for that large number of people. And I've been lucky enough in probably for the last 10 years working in environments that have had quite a few S&C coaches. And like, I've worked within a system that has what we call it a player watch system. So like roughly at the minute, I look after, I think, 12 players of the squad. In rugby, I would look after anywhere between 14 to 18 players. So still a decent chunk of players, but there's some guys that are getting taken care of by other coaches. So I still need to be aware of what they need, but maybe the depth of relationship with them and the depth of knowledge of what that guy really needs is a little less than the 12 players that I currently work with, in terms of just like, their physiological traits, how they recover. Are they someone who, even like how you coach, like, are they someone that likes kind of to chat and talk in the gym? Are they someone that comes in and just works? Are they someone that I need to put my arm around them? Are they someone that needs a bit more of the stick and needs to be pushed? Within that, there's so many different individual things that as a coach, you have to manage all of those needs whilst trying to drive everything towards that same collective goal, which is tough. And again, it changes every year as your group changes. I'm sure if you're working with under 17s, and obviously they age out, after 1 or 2 years, you've got a completely new set of individuals. And from working in academy rugby, like, one year you get a really good crop, and then another year, maybe they need a little bit more time with you, a bit more education. Maybe one group can are really autonomous and can manage themselves, and they manage their own culture. And you can play more of a facilitator role. And other groups, actually, you have to be the autocratic leader, because maybe they're not willing to or able to manage themselves and their own culture. And I think that's the joy of coaching, right? Of every day and every season can sometimes be a little bit different. And that's the bit that I enjoy a lot, of trying to mold that and be purposeful with the decision making around what you choose, when, why, and how.
Yeah, just like you said it, the under 17s especially, we change up the team every 2 years. They're completely gone. And even on my team, I think we had a big turnaround this season, with new management and new coaches, and probably more than half of the team was switched out. So now I'm in the gym pretty soon with 26 or 25 to 26 players, from young to old. They're from, don't need to get in details about some specifics, but it's always a new challenge. And the stuff I did last season might work again for a couple. You might need to write a new whole program for the preseason, for the in-season, just because you have new faces, new challenges coming up. And it's very challenging, like you said, but it's also, on the other side, it's very fun, because you never stop to learn something. You always have to face new challenges, and you have to find new ways on how to deal with them. And that's the stuff I really like. Yeah.
Yeah, and that, like, for me, that's something that I'm quite passionate about. Of like, sometimes the stuff that happens in the gym can be very very similar, and potentially quite boring. And our job sometimes is to put the window dressing around it so it doesn't feel as boring. And one of the things that I try to do every year is theme either the phase, the block, the program, or even the year itself. And for example, I work with some of our goalkeepers here at Chelsea, and one of them is very big into cars, and so like I latched onto an analogy around, okay, in preseason it's about building the engine of the car, and then maybe a bit further down the line, and that would link itself quite well to developing horsepower, heavy strength lifting. Then maybe in the mid-season it's more about developing the chassis, so that might be, okay, bulletproofing certain areas so that you can cope with the bumps and bruises of the season. And then it might be, okay, we might be wanting to pump up the tires now, so that lends itself to maybe more plyometric loading and that stretch shortening cycle work, sort of that transfer based work to be really reactive. And okay, we've worked initially on like the engine and increasing the horsepower, then maybe we're developing that chassis and getting it all aligned right, and getting, again, that might be more down to the mobility side of things. Then, okay, we're going to pump the tires up. And then maybe down the line, it might be, okay, we're now going to work on the driver. So that might be more some of the movement mechanics and the movement efficiency work around speed, acceleration, change of direction. And that analogy, like, stuck with the players quite well, as a way of theming what was really probably stuff that they've done for many years in their career, but it was just a way of framing it and theming it that might have helped connect that message a bit better. And I work with one athlete in rugby, quite old athlete, but very, very decorated professional, England international. And he's quite a dry individual. And he said to me that his program should consist of 3 exercises, and that's front squat, bench, and chin. And anything else, we need to have a discussion. And it's like, you know what? Actually, those 3 exercises gave him an awful lot, and he did them very, very well and executed them at a really good quality intent. But there's the meat and bones of a pretty good program all there. And again, like whenever I try and do some posterior chain work, or if I was trying to get a little bit more edgy with some transfer power based plyometric work, he'd pull me aside and be like, come on now, you're getting a little bit exuberant and extravagant here, giving me some pogos or some RDLs. Like, let's just stick to the 3 main ones. And I was like, okay, right, okay, well, maybe let's just keep this RDL in for your posterior chain. Or no, you know what? Actually, I know you're a big guy and you're a prop, and not much of your game is reactive, but you do have to get around the park a little bit, and maybe there's a place for you to at least attempt some sprints or to do something with velocity, whether that's some trap bar jumps or box jumps or whatever. And yeah, that was always something that was interesting to me, of that I've taken through my career, of like, sometimes some players can handle doing 3 lifts for their entire career with no window dressing whatsoever. And then you can have another player who you just need to constantly give them entertainment. So different things that they feel are different and that are giving them something else. And it's like, actually, all of that might just be window dressing that enables you to do the main thing. So that could still be, let's say they're squatting, but they're supersetting it with, I don't know, reactive step off of a box going laterally, and it's like, this is helping me with my fast feet. Okay, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but as long as you're happy and you'll do the work that is sort of the meat and potatoes of your lifting, then again, that's good quality coaching to get a guy to buy in. And certainly with like social media nowadays, where there's so many things available to athletes, so many S&C coaches now that have grown up on diets of seeing all the weird stuff that's on social media, that maybe they're peddling some of these things to the players, and the player believes that that's what good quality strength training is, when in reality it's probably not the case. Sometimes you just, I've learned, rather than butting heads with a player, you give them a little bit of what they want so that you can give them a lot of what they need.
I think social media aspect is another huge topic where would explode the whole podcast here, I think, because we probably can talk about that for another 2 to 3 hours if we really want to, because I have the same stuff here with my guys, that they show me videos of people bench pressing a whole squat rack or something, and all those videos on Instagram. And same thing, they see something good, they see something, like you said it, I think before we started, or when we started with Wayne Gretzky. I mean, if you look at Connor McDavid, who's one of the, if not the best player at the moment in ice hockey, and you see videos of him working out in the gym, working on his core, working on his rotation, our players want to recreate that. And I think that's a very good option, that you can see how the best of the best train. Obviously, it's just a little picture of what they are actually doing, but still you can look at it and you can find alternatives. You can find variations. What is suitable for the equipment that we have, so we can train like the best in a little bit, in some kind of way or form. But on the
It's
other
good
hand,
to it's good to leverage that, certainly because
yeah,
these guys look up to the Conor McDavids of the world. I guess it's just when those guys aren't doing good quality training, or when, and this is social media, right? Like, doing a squat is probably pretty boring, whereas doing some of the more kind of out there exercises are ones that get clicks. And so Conor McDavid might be doing a very generic, good, like kind of basic, good quality strength training, but that doesn't make it to social media, and they've kind of cherry picked one exercise which he does as 2% of his program, and everyone's like, this is what he does,
yeah,
I need to do
exactly,
this.
yeah,
And so it's and that's where I think the education piece comes in. That, again, our job as especially working with young players, is to give them a good grounding within what good quality competent S&C looks like, and giving them the ability to critically think and go, okay, I've seen this guy do that, that might help me, but you know what, I'm not going to drop all of what's in my program right now and just do what the star that I've seen on
yeah.
Instagram is doing. I think that's a key thing for us to try and educate our players, and a sign of good quality coaching, and that the guys can be a bit more autonomous with that and have good quality discussions around, okay, I think this might help me, and then you involve them in that process, which I think, yeah, is tremendous for developing buy-in, and getting guys to show up and do things with intent on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, you really have to know what is actually a good exercise to implement. And as a strength coach, you might know, or you should maybe know it a little bit, but you can't expect from every player, from the 18-year-old, to know what is really good for him or really valuable for him to do. So you really need to coach him also through that. That
Yeah.
you see all the blinking videos, all the exercises with a lot of bands, a lot of balls. It's so much going on in those short videos, and they don't really know if it's good or bad. They just see, how do you describe that? They just see so much going on the screen that they think it's good to do that. And
Yeah, and they
and
see a high profile guy doing it, and it
exactly,
legitimizes it. And like,
yeah,
going back to our 18 to 41-year-old, like, comment, like, what the 41-year-old needs compared to the 18, like the 41-year-old, it might be really, really beneficial for them having close to 20 years worth of strength training, that maybe they've maxed out those qualities, and actually they can invest more time in some of the more kind of cherry on the cake type
yeah,
exercises, that perceptual, visual, ocular type work. Whereas the 18-year-old, yeah, that might be interesting and good for them to do at some point, but it shouldn't detract from maybe the basics of what they do. And my most recent rugby club I worked for, I worked with an athlete who was an incredible athlete, like, could squat close to 300 kilos, bench press 200 kilos, really, really good quality accelerator, ridiculously strong, in tremendous shape. But then he, in his own training, would do a lot of rotational work, a lot of rope swings, a lot of kind of a little bit more out there work. And he was really, like, good in that he knew that, okay, he probably didn't need to do a lot of the generic strength training anymore, because he'd maxed that out. And some of the more movement based, getting out of the sagittal plane type work that he was doing was really beneficial to him, because he'd probably had 10 years of really good quality strength training underneath him. But he was good in that when there was maybe other guys in his position, young guys, who were like, oh, what are you doing here? Why are you doing that? How can I jump in on that? It was like, yes, this is going to be good for you, but don't forget that I've been on a journey of 10 years of just lifting tin all the time. This can't be detracting from that to build your strength qualities to play that position, which as a prop in rugby is such an strength is so important. Like that's going to basically be a rate limiter to whether you can play and play at a level or not. So it takes what it takes. You're going to have to develop those qualities, and those qualities likely have to be developed in the gym in a certain way. So over investment in some of the more out there things might not help that individual, but certainly for him, who like had reached that stage of strong enough through years and years of good quality training, that work was tremendous for him, and like he was really engaged in it and felt that it helped his movement on the pitch. And like I think that's the key thing of like the 18-year-old might not need it, but the 41-year-old, some of that work that's a little bit more out there might be great to get them to that might be the lowest hanging fruit for the 41-year-old, whereas for the 18-year-old, maybe there are so many other things that they need to prerequisites that they need to earn first. But actually that's not the best thing for them.
Yeah, but that's again the challenging part, and also the fun part, to really sit down and figure out what could work, try it, test it, and see hopefully the results, the positive results then. And yeah, it's one of the most fun aspects of the job for sure, to really make a program for that big bandwidth of age gaps or age groups. And then you have the tall guys, you have the small ones, you have the guys who already weigh 120 kilos of pure muscles, the a little slower ones, the ones who you really have to do a lot of endurance work, for example, and to get those all on the same page and get them to work on the same team goal. That's the key, and that's the funny and great part of it. Not funny, but I think you know what I mean, like the fun aspect of it, to program it.
Yeah, for sure.
Peter, I have one or two final questions before we wrap it up,
Sure.
because I'm really interested in your career, for example, and the work you already did. Because you started in soccer, or in football, you came to rugby, and then again now to football. Is there one thing which you wish that you knew a little bit earlier in your career regarding strength and conditioning?
So I'd say that one of my most formative 2 years was actually working at a university setting, because you did so much coaching and across a wide array of different athletes and personalities, that my ability to coach got far better through just spending a lot more time in the trenches. Whereas sometimes when you work in the pro setting, you've got that, say, 30-minute session that you want to deliver, and you might have that once a day, 5 days a week, give or take. Whereas in a university setting, you'd come in at 7 and you'd coach different groups till 1. You'd have an hour for lunch, and then you'd coach from 2 till 5. And so you barely have any time to do any programming, any kind of in-depth analysis and stuff, because you're just on the gym floor, and you were constantly thinking, oh, I just want a little bit more time to be able to do the other bits, to do the admin, the paperwork, and the time to creatively think.
Yeah.
But sometimes, because you're just on the gym floor coaching these different groups, almost like a conveyor belt, you can't help but along the way start to develop qualities around how you coach, where you stand, how you set up a drill, how you check and challenge understanding, how you engage with a group, how you dial up certain elements of your personality dependent on the group. So like if I was working with rugby, for example, they've got big effervescent personalities where they can be the loudest voice in the room, and then you go an hour later and you work with fencing where they're all introverts, and you have to be the American strength coach who's the big personality guy, and then you work with another group and it's like, okay, it's maybe males, it's all female lacrosse, and so the version of you that you play across different groups of like allows you to get that coaching range that I think helps you when you go back to a team sport in the pro setting where you're going to have introverts, you're going to have extroverts, you're going to have guys that are difficult, guys that are easy, guys that want to know what to do, guys that just want to know, like, just want to be told what to do. So I think those were probably some of my most formative years that, like, if I'd known that earlier, I'd have been a better coach much earlier. And certainly then going from that role to working in the academy, in the academy space, like I still sometimes think I did my best work when I was in that academy setting, compared to some of the first team roles that I've worked in. And I think I might be speaking wrongly, but I get a sense that a lot of people want to work the first team roles too soon, when the academy roles can be such great development roles because you're a little bit out of the limelight also, and you get a chance to experiment, you get a chance to make mistakes. That can be a great space to just be a better coach overall. And like sometimes I do miss like that coaching, and in reality that's probably where you have the most impact too. It's just a shame that at most places the compensation tends to be the worst, working with the people that need it the most. And then when you're working at the first team level, where sometimes it's glorified babysitting, you're paid the most, but actually the level of impact you have might be the least comparative to academy sports.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean. Before I started working in the pro field, I was, I think, also for about 4 or 5 years working in the youth program for my hometown team. And then from age groups, I think starting under 9s or under 11s up to under 20s. Sometimes here, sometimes you do the warm ups here, strength part on the under 15s. And you have so many different age groups, so many different kids and young athletes to train, that you are, like you said, it was a nice way of framing it. You're in the trenches for so many hours a week that you you're just made for it, because you're just coaching. And then when you step back to the first team, or then in my case, I stepped to the first team, now I'm with them 2 or 3 times a week during in season. I mean, in my case, I go on the ice with them as well as an assistant coach, but the amount of time actually coaching is way less than in youth teams, because also in the youth they don't know yet of how to do it. You really have to coach them, and then now you kind of observe, and you kind of like, hey, do a little bit more here, try to add this and this. Like you said it good, it's like a little bit of babysitting as well, but nonetheless it's still an amazing job. But it's just completely different environment and a completely different setting.
Yeah, it's something that like I've tried to be purposeful with when you've been in it for that long, of like coach a different group. So like when I was at Bristol Bears, like there was a couple times where I'd coach the women in the evening. And I'd drop into a session where I had no clue about what they were like, how they move, and it challenges your coaching. And same if you work with a couple of younger guys, or guys that maybe don't have as much of a gym background, where you're at ground zero, where you haven't been in that space for quite some time. It's useful to kind of keep the sword sharp, where actually, okay, go coach the under 15s and coach a squat pattern from the ground up, or okay, come in and coach someone some speed training where they've never done any speed training before, and you're checking, challenging, understanding, you're getting your points across, and you're challenging yourself to be concise with the points that you make and deliberate with your cueing. Like those things are important, I think, when you're in the first team environment for a while, where you get used to, like you said, it's like little tweaks, because they may work with you for 3 years, that the way that you coach there is slightly different. I found it always, I didn't really get much chance this off season, but in an off season, like try and hunt down those coaching opportunities for the joy and the love of coaching itself, even if it's just volunteering to just make sure that you still have those capabilities to be able to coach things.
Would you say because I said two more questions, so last one coming up. I'll rephrase it a bit after this, after the first one, because I wanted to ask you about what's in your eyes a separation of good and or good practitioners and coaches to great ones. Is it after your answer right now? Is it the more time you spend coaching in the weight room that you get better at it? And is it that what separates good and great ones, or is it also something completely different?
I think one thing is being quite deliberate with evaluating yourself and knowing, okay, where are your blind spots? Did I actually do what I thought I was going to do? So, like, and that can be as simple as just on the drive home, just a self evaluation of how did my coaching session go? Did I stand in the right place? Did my message land? If it didn't, why didn't it land? Okay, what was the flow of the session? How did I involve other coaches with this? Were they aligned and did they have clarity on what their role was? Things like that of how you set up the environment. Like was the education piece there? What was my language like? Did I give the guys chance to like if I was question coaching? Did I actually give them a chance to answer the question, or did I just do talk, and show off my knowledge where they just shut up and just get told? Or did I actually ask some open-ended questions? What kind of questions was I asking? Like these kind of things can easily happen just on a brief drive home of, okay, what was the vibe like? How would I do things differently? What's the progression from this? That I imagine most coaches are doing, but sometimes just doing it in a little bit more of a deliberate sense and having perhaps a hot debrief right after a session with the other coaches that were involved in the session of like literally 30 seconds, like, okay, did that work? Why didn't it work? If it did work, what are we going to continue to do? What do we need to change? What are the progressions or regressions? Who do we need to watch out for in this session? Like, I think that's one thing that separates the good to the great. And then I think the other thing is people understanding getting above just the weight room and it just being strength, of having an understanding of what happens on the field or on the ice, of how does that transfer, and understanding where strength has a place or not. And obviously, when we work within the weight room, we're going to have probably a inflated view of how important that is, and certainly it is very important. But like a better the great coaches have a better understanding of how that one jigsaw piece fits amongst all the other jigsaw pieces. And so one thing that I think, like, from a conditioning side, so the C of the S&C, that I certainly believe now is that a lot of that conditioning work should happen within the framework of the game model that the coach has. So within the context of the game, with influence from the S&C coach around parameters, density, area size, drill size, rep time, etc. But some coaches I see have they've got their mass calculators and they know that they need to run, and certainly there's a place for doing that work. And okay, we need to go off feet because then we can just like see the conditioning side is all bike work, when actually, like, if you structure the training in such a way, you potentially end up with both. If you have a coach who's willing to listen and willing to set up his sessions in a way that assist that physical development of the conditioning qualities. So like, I think that's something that separates the good to the great, of like not just focusing on the one or two things that you can add, and actually it's part of the wider side of things. And some of the best coaches that I've worked with are the best influencers of the coaches. They're the ones who might not be the absolute best practitioners of delivering a running session, but they're phenomenal at influencing the coaches to get you what they want, to get them to give you what you want anyway, that you don't need to do that running session. And actually the players got that physical quality within a far more perceptually rich contextual setting.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe they just need a top up now rather than a big running session. And I think that's what I've seen of the very best coaches are the ones that are able to critically think about themselves and grow, and then the ones that kind of zoom out enough to see how all of the pieces slot together, whether that's the physios, whether that's the psychologists, the nutritionists, the coaches, the skill coaches, whether that's the media guys, and how does all of those competing demands fit together for that one individual? Those are the guys that I think are operating at the highest level.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I don't have, to be honest, anything to add on that one, because I think you said that perfectly. There's always those small little details on the wheels that spin, which how do you call those, the wheels which are interlocking, that
The
all
gears,
need,
yeah,
the
yeah,
gears, thank you,
yeah,
that all need to work on the same page, and they all need to spin perfectly together. And I think a great coach can handle all that every part is in line with each other. And at the end of the day, it's about developing and getting the most performance out of the players, and to treat their needs as good as they need it, and not about the stuff only the coach wants, because it's, in our case, a team sport. And as coaches, we need to make the players better, and develop them better, and not to make us feel better at the end of the day.
yeah, 100%. Like, it's very easy to
Yeah.
do stuff just because you need a number to fill in the spreadsheet, or because you really like this training methodology. Like, probably another 3 hour discussion around whether Olympic lifting is good or bad, or whether like you follow West Side Barbell and squatting is good or bad. Like, in reality, like, just because you like doing squatting or you like Olympic lifting doesn't necessarily mean that's the best thing for the athlete in front of you. Like, and do it for the athlete, and what is our primary role, and that's to develop physiological adaptations to ultimately assist their ability to perform on the field. And so, yeah, keeping that end goal in mind is key, I think, when you're making decisions around programming and what you should do and when you should do it.
Yeah, exactly. I think we would have already have some more topics for a follow-up episode, I feel like. But I think for now, time to wrap it up. You shared some incredible, valuable information. I think I told you before we started that I never had a guest where I didn't pick up a couple of things. And again, it's still the truth. I already picked up a couple of things, marked them down, to use it for myself, and also for my team and my players to try out, and rearrange it a little bit for the needs of them, and to try it out, because I really like the analogy you told us, or told me, with the car, to build the engine and the chassis, because I never thought about that, and I always have that 2 or 3 players who I really need to motivate. And at the beginnings, I didn't know how I really can get to them. And they were a little bit older than me. I was in my early 20s, and they were at their late 30s. And they were like, oh, what does this young coach now want from me? And I think that's an interesting idea of how you can get to them a little closer, to teach them, or to tell them that you don't want to harm them, that you don't want to change everything what they have been doing, but just to give a little bit of a new impulse, for example. So on my end, I learned a lot, and I will try out a couple of things. And like I said, I noted some down, and I hopefully the viewers also learn something new and learn something valuable in the stuff you shared to me. So I'm really, really happy to have you on the show, talk to you a little bit. I mean, I told you it's going to be about 30, 40 minutes. Now we talked over an hour.
It's okay.
So time flew by pretty quickly. But if you
I'm,
don't
I'm
have...
I'm just glad that your streak's still alive. That the guests you're having on are giving you something that you can take away. And yeah, again, if you want to do a follow up, or if there's an appetite for different things to discuss, I'm more than open to talk.
Would love to. And
Same
I
for your
think...
listeners as well. So again, if they've got any questions, if they're listening and anything resonates, like, I'm more than happy to.
After my huge monologue about the analogy, I totally forgot to ask you if you would like to share some social media or some homepages of yours, so I can put them in the descriptions, because sometimes there are questions, so they can contact you if you want.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I'd probably still on the dumpster fire that is X. If you want to reach out on there, or Instagram, there's Pete Burridge, or LinkedIn now because is a little bit more professional side of things. So yeah, if anyone has got anything that they want to ask or reach out about, yeah, feel free. Like, I'm more than open to talk and to answer questions that anyone's got.
Okay, I'll put it in the description. And for everyone listening, Pete Burridge on kind of every social media out there. And if there are questions, please contact me, contact Pete. We're both very open to answer questions and to exchange, to talk, to communicate, and to learn, obviously. And on my end, Pete, like I said, thank you very, very much. It was a pleasure talking to you, meeting you, and would love to talk to you again one day.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and yeah, thanks for the great questions.
Yeah, it was awesome talking to you. Take care and a nice evening, Pete.
Cheers.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the show. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow the podcast, leave a rating or comment, and share it with someone who loves sports science. And for more content, follow me on Instagram at science_in_sports_. See you in the next episode.